Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and we are continuing in a series of episodes. We are breaking down tracks to the lost albums, Bruce's gift to us, 7 unreleased albums. In each episode, we are focusing on a separate album. Joining me, a return guest, one of my favorite people. We always
Oh,
have a best time talking. Anthony, how you doing, my friend?
I am, and thank you for the kind words. You talk to a lot of great people. You're being very kind, but it's great. It's great to be back, and I'm super excited because you said it. Gift is the right word from my perspective, for what we've been given, and I look forward to talking about just one of those gifts tonight.
Yeah, we are talking Faithless
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah.
My good friend Sylvan Groth in my John Hyatt podcast always gives just the facts. So I'm going to try to do that version, a few notes about it, and then we'll get into our deep dive. It's a meditation on purpose, belief, and acceptance, intended to accompany a film described as a spiritual Western. Springsteen recorded much of Faithless between the conclusions of the Devil and Dust tour in November of 2005 and the release of We Shall Overcome, the Seeger sessions, in April of 2006. Throughout the collection's 11 songs, including 4 pieces of instrumental music written as interstitial pieces of the film, Faith explored Springsteen's unique vision of spirituality in the mythic American West while working inside of this uncharted artistic medium. This was really unusual collection of songs, Springsteen remembers, with all of Faithless composed before a single frame of film was shot over a prolific 2 weeks in Florida. He explains of the results. You could recognize details and maybe a character too, but I just wrote atmospheric music that I thought would fit.
Mm.
So, Anthony,
Yeah.
why did you decide this is one you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I've been on a couple times, and I know the one time we focused two times really. When we discussed Devils and Dust, I wanted to talk to you about that one just because of my own faith background and some of the deep connections I saw in that writing to spirituality. And then on a separate occasion, we talked about just my background in terms of my religious or faith background. I'm a part-time pastor. And so always interested in trying to see and make those connections. And so when all these albums were announced, I figured a couple things. One is people would probably be less inclined to jump on this one just because it sounds a bit unusual. And but for me, it was quite interesting. I figured this would be one of the more obvious and explicit spiritual set of songs that Bruce would ever write. But I also knew and have always been drawn to the deep sense of spirituality and the journey of life and faith and death that's contained in all of his music, right? It's all there. Sometimes it's just not the religious language, right? Or it's not as explicit. But knowing that this album would be quite direct and explicit in those regards, I figured it would be fun to talk about it and try to make some connections for folks. So yeah, so that's what drew me to it.
That sounds perfect. I really, I am a firm believer that in another life, Bruce would been a some kind of Southern preacher. So I just feel like this is really sitting on his wheelhouse. We start out with, dealer's choice. Do you want to go track by track? You want to talk general terms? What you tell me.
Yeah, we could ultimately we're going to end up doing both. I
Okay.
definitely have some overarching thoughts and I'll connect some larger themes, but we certainly can start out.
Okay.
Let's try to tackle it track by track, but I'm going to quickly probably jump around a little bit to
Okay.
the extent
Perfect.
that we do that, right?
Okay.
It opens with one of the instrumental numbers.
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the start there's 4 instrumental songs. And like that intrigued me. Just looking at those 4 intrigued me. And of course, we have no words. They are purely, by and large, atmospheric. The exception being the fourth and final one because it's an instrumental version of a song that that occurs just 2 tracks before that, right? So
Yeah.
there we have a little bit of a different feeling to it. But these other three that again he describes as just atmospheric music. The first one that opens the album is called Desert, basically, and then the second one later on in the first side refers to a river, and then that third one refers to the ocean, right? So I thought right there he's telling a little bit of a story, right? Because you're going from the desert that represents emptiness and poverty and faithlessness, perhaps doubt, right? Chaos, death, all of those kind of elements, right, would strike us as being evident when we talk about a desert. And then the opposite of that is in many terms, especially in spiritual terms, this idea of water, right? You think of water and there's
Yes.
baptism and there's cleansing and there's life. We literally are composed of water. We can't live without water. And so you go from that desert and then there's the river, which is a certain kind of flowing water, and then ultimately the ocean, which is this almost abundance of life and water, right? And so I think right there, like you see a little bit of a succession, but and then I'll talk about the last one later on. So just that kind of connects, I think, some bigger dots for us. But then if we go track by track, yeah, we open in the desert, right? We open with that emptiness, and it certainly feels cinematic. What I really like about the album, in retrospect, is that there wasn't a film that was ultimately produced. And there's this idea of not when we show too much, right, we leave nothing to the imagination, right? And you can apply
Yeah.
that in many facets of life. And here, if we had the film, we would have been given a very clear picture and we would have seen these songs in a certain context. Without the film, I think the album works beautifully and it gives us a bigger lens, I think, to evaluate these songs, both personally and in our world, in our own journeys, right? I I think it was absolutely appropriate that he ultimately released it, film notwithstanding, right? I think there's a strength that comes forward not having the film and just and leaving it to our own imaginations to come up with it. So you have a picture, right? That opening clip is it feels like a desert, right? And
Yeah, it does.
you start to visualize like what that would look like. And you do know certain things. It's based on some sort of spiritual western that takes a place a long time ago. That presents a certain picture, at least in my mind, as far as of deserts and maybe some of the westerns that I may have watched growing up, and particularly old westerns. So that's where we start, and then that first song. And stop me wherever you want to jump in, Jesse, because
Yeah.
I
Okay,
could
okay.
I could do a whole monologue log, and I don't know if that'll be as
Yeah,
interesting.
I agree. The instrumental is
Yep.
a very interesting way to start. And part of me is this is a it is half a story. As a score, the film is the other half of the story.
Yeah.
And you know how often music is used to communicate emotion in a film.
Hmm.
So I think it's really interesting that we are getting this side of it.
Yeah.
That the idea that, you know, this gun's for hire, Bruce is brought on to do so
Yeah.
I assume he's working off a script
Yeah.
or a movie treatment. So yeah, I think it's interesting and I love the way this mood fits. One of the things I loved on Western Stars is the instrumental in the film between the
Hmm.
songs. There
Yeah.
was this instrumental interludes where he talked and he wrote those as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
let's start diving into some of the other songs.
All right. So we start out with where you go and where you're from. And for me, like this is sequencing for Bruce in his albums is never an accident. It's always
Right.
significant. And so this is a wonderful opening, right? You have the desert instrumental, and then this question, where are you going? Where are you from? And to best understand any of these things, and I think in large part to best understand a lot of Bruce's music, like you've got to speak the language of metaphor, and you've got to see it that way, right? If we try,
Yeah.
you could always take things literally, but when you do that, you stay right at the surface, right? Like you're
Yes.
only an inch deep, right? It's the metaphor that drives you deeper into anything, right? Religious texts, songs,
Yeah.
art, right? So like metaphorically, like this is a huge question. Like this is a question of identity and destiny. Like where do I come from? Right? Who am I? Is ultimately what the question's asking. And it's a beautiful and important and relevant question for all of us. And of course it starts out the album, right? That's what this narrator or the main character here, right? If we think of a singular character going through this film or this album, like that's how he begins his journey, trying to figure out who the heck he is, right? What is he meant to do? Who is he? Who is he clearly in relation to God? That's the question that he's wrestling with throughout, right? So that's that. And Bruce talks about to write a good song, you need a good metaphor, right? And often that metaphor is contained within the title of the song, right? So it's where you going, where you from. And that is and we could read some of the verses. There's a lot of religious language here, right? I'm just wandering on the road to kingdom come early in the morning. There's lots of references throughout this album of morning, which is this kind of symbol or signal of something new, resurrection, new life. And then there's references to the evening, right? Which is death or despair. And here it's I'm wandering on the road to kingdom come early in the morning, just building my mansion in the evening sun. Glory, hallelujah. And this guy is trying to figure it out. I've got scotch in a whiskey bottle, a round in my hawk and gun, a smile that ain't a smile, which is a great line. There's something, this guy's smiling, but he's living with a certain ambiguity, a certain uncertainty. He's not showing people exactly who he is because he doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
All of that in this simple little song. It's just,
And that's, I love the simplicity of this.
yeah,
Many of these are very simple songs
yep,
with almost a mantra, the same repetition, similar to like a rosary
yes,
or meditation. And so I really like that. And I do love the imagery of building my mansion in the evening sun because we have a mansion on the hill. And then in one of these other albums, when I build my beautiful house,
yeah,
he's talking about this. Yeah, I think this is the instrumentation starts at beautiful, and then this catches you up right away.
yeah.
One
And
of the things, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry. You're right on with the repetition of a lot of the songs is not an accident. Again, Bruce doesn't do anything by
Right.
accident, and it does. You're right. That makes these songs very hymn, very a lot of them very African spiritual, and it's that repetition that almost that moves you into a state of meditation, a trance. The best example from Bruce that I can think of this, of course, is a cover song, is Dream Baby Dream, right? I
Yeah.
mean that was his whole point is to take you out of yourself, right, to another place by just repeating those mantras over and over again, right? And
Yeah.
I love in the end the other little detail before we move on to the next song is that little boy blue come blow your horn. So that's from a nursery rhyme. Little boy blue is supposed to be watching the sheep and he falls asleep. And so you get this sense that this guy who's questioning who the heck he is, he's also got a sense of his own infallibility, right? Is he fallen asleep
Yeah.
while being having been at his on his own responsibilities? And again, there's this spiritual sojourning, this search that's going on, and it begins just with that critical question of who the heck am I? And then we move into Faithless, right? Which we've had for a little while. It was the kind of the first single that we got from this album. And again, the chorus, he's without faith, he's without faith, he's without faith until, right? And
Yeah.
this is where flesh meets flesh, right? This is the human and the divine. Like his salvation is found in another, in companionship, in not being alone on the journey. And I love how it goes from I met you, then I saw you. And that almost seems like it's in reverse, but we can meet someone and not really see them for who they
Yeah.
are. So it's like he meets them, he sees them, and then the final two times it says, I found you. And And he's found grace, he's found salvation, call it what you want. He's found it in the, presumably in the arms of a lover or a great friend, whatever it may be. But it's having someone to travel on this journey with that restores his faith.
Yeah, and I think also you also could push this that he found God. He found Christ. He
Yep.
found this. When he talks about, I reached for the hem of his garment. I
Mm.
stood at the light of the
Yep.
doorway. The often there's a lot of hymns that I stand at the door and knock. You have to let me in.
Yeah.
And the once again we talk about the water that saw my face in the waters of the riverside. I'm thinking of the lines baptized in these waters, in other lyrics. So I think it works both ways. That when we released Faithless originally, I thought this more as finding his companion
Yeah.
is what gave him faith. But as I read this in the context and listen to it, I feel more that this is him finding
Mm.
that he's finding his Christ, his God. And
Yeah.
I think it could work either way, but I just think this is once again really a very complex, simple song that's
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah. No, you're right on. It could, right? And then you can say the same thing, and we'll get to it in a couple songs. God sent you. Did God send again a friend, a companion, a lover?
Yeah,
Or did God send Christ? And is that whom He's
yeah,
found here?
yeah. In fact, let's skip to that and we'll come back.
Yeah.
I'll share a little bit of personal. My sister is a very strong woman of faith. And last summer we lost my mom. And before that, like a year before, we lost our brother. And then at this past Thanksgiving, she lost her husband.
Oh,
And it just, yeah, just
yeah.
she says I feel like it's a nightmare. I can't
It's too
wake up.
much. It's too much.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I sent her this song, The God
Mm,
Sent You. And
yeah.
I said, I heard this and I just thought of you and I wanted to share it. And she got it and then she posted it on Facebook
Uh-huh.
saying, God has sent me so many people over the
Mm,
years.
yeah.
And it made me very happy. God sent you to me a prayer of safety and salvation. God sent you to me when faith was so hard to see. God sent you to me through his inner light, forsake temptation. God sent you to me. And so if you're weary on that road you travel, the hardship handed to thee, I'll walk forever thankful that God sent you to me. Once again, this could be talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
This could be, but it also could be talking about that companion that Bruce talks about. He wants, he feels like his audience is his companion.
Yeah.
And Land of Hope and Dreams, I need a good companion on this part of the ride.
Yeah.
I just think that's why I went to it. I think that's a wonderful 1-2 punch on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, I agree. And yeah, and I think he also, and God Sent You might be, I think My Master's Hand is probably my favorite song on this album, but God Sent You is right there. I love the piano on it. It just adds,
Yes.
because we've got a lot of subtle guitar on this album.
Yeah.
So I love the piano on that one. But I also would go back a little bit, like, and again, just connecting pieces, like where are you going, where are you from? Again, that question of who am I? And so in Faithless, I love the line, and you referenced I reach for the hem of his garment, which is very Jesus, New Testament. There's a very specific story about that, the woman that reaches for his garment. I stood in the light of the doorway. That could reference multiple instances within the New Testament or
Yeah.
perhaps something else. But then I love that I saw my face in the waters of the riverside because sometimes we discover God or faith, and at the same time we become more acquainted with who we are. So there's almost a sense of self-discovery in that, right? I mean, you could
Yes.
almost see that him looking in the waters, and maybe they settle for a moment, and he can see himself perhaps for the first time, like who he is. So that opening question of who am I in some way gets answered at that riverside as he looks in the water because he's been provided again, companionship in the form of a woman, a man, Christ, right? However you see it. but he's also discovering himself in the process, right? And you can't separate these things, right?
Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, I think those two songs definitely work in concert. And in between, you have All God's Children, which is his plea for, and Bruce leaning on this sense of kind of universal salvation, right? Like we are all invited to the party. We're all asked to get aboard that train. And I read it in the context of the album. I read that song as a hope for from the narrator, because he still has got, he's a bit of a mess. There's sin here and there's doubt and
I've
there's,
been crawling with snakes
yeah,
and crying, flying
yeah.
with the birds.
So he's making the statement like all of God's children got a place on earth, but he's asking the question at the same time. And aren't we all, like, when we make an affirmation, when we say a prayer, we're asserting it, but we're all, there's a part of it that's always asking it too. Is it true? We want it to be
Yeah.
true. I think it's as much a question as anything else, but it's a question that he can begin to ask because he's found some sense of faith, and that continues in God sent you. And then, and I should say, because we're talking, we've brushed through the, if you look at the, and I've got the vinyl here. I love
Okay.
records. Like, they're
Yes.
wonderful to
Yeah,
just to just
exactly.
to touch. They've got a certain smell to them when they're new. But A Prayer by the River is the instrumental in between All God's Children and God Sent You. So it's as if we've gone from the desert and now we've got some life, right? Because we've got a
Yeah.
companion, right? We're not alone. We believe that all people, are invited to this story. And so the river comes into play. And then we've got God Sent You. Then we flip the album. If you're listening to it on vinyl, we're flipping the album. And then there's Going to California, which is the promised land.
Yeah.
This is Bruce. You can dress it up in this particular way, and this album has a very narrow landscape, but the bigger pictures, that are the bigger questions that he's presenting,
Yeah.
are the ones that he's been presenting forever. This is Born to Run. This is Thunder Road. This is the Promised Land. Like Going to California. This is what his dad did for some sense of peace, like leaving for California. This is, I think, of the Broadway show when he talks about packing up and having that sense of freedom because they were leaving New Jersey and they were
Yep.
they were heading to California. And he tells that story, and then he sings Thunder Road, which is this song of freedom on the road, right? And this is it, right? Whether you're gonna get there or not, that's the kind of the tension and the irony of the biblical story of the promised land, is that Moses never enters in. Like, he literally sees it in the distance and dies. Like, he never gets there.
Yeah.
So it's about the journey, not the destination. And this is a song where, hey, I've got a sense of faith, I've got companionship, and now I'm on the open road. I'm going to California.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
I love the lyrics, right? Where the sun spits into the deep blue sea. At the end of the day, with Mother Moon on its way, you can feel what it's like to be free. You can almost feel what it's like to be free. And the idea of the freedom that in California we'll find the good job, we will find a chance to be something.
Yep.
Going back to in my hometown, we talk about getting out. And so
Yep.
escaping, and you're right, that's Born to Run. That's my Thunder Road. It's all there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that last verse before he gets back into the chorus. So come on, hop on with me. Come on, go with me. Again, he's not going alone. And whether, again, that's the companion or your understanding of God, like, this journey is not to be traveled alone, because in all of these songs, like, life doesn't get easier or perfect or resolved, right? He's still a little bit of a mess. He's still experiencing trouble and some hard times, but the difference that makes all the difference is he's not in it alone. There's a shared suffering. And that, if I put my pastoral hat on and my Christian hat on, like, that, to me, that's the essence of the story of Christ, is that we're not alone in this journey. That our troubles are not going to be taken away, but they will be shared. And that's what he's saying. Come on, hop on with me. I'm going to California, going to California. And then that third instrumental, the Western Sea, right? Now it's
Yeah.
the abundance of the ocean, right? And there's a certain sense of cosmic universalism, just if you think about the ocean and what each drop represents and how it works together. And also throughout all of this, the landscape is evident, creation, right? So if the, he doesn't talk about a guy carrying his Bible along. The Bible, in effect, is creation itself, right? And he's seeing God's fingerprints throughout this journey. This is not a journey in someone's living room, right? This is a journey
Yeah.
that he's taking out in the on the open road and through difficult terrain and beautiful terrain and great stuff. And he gets to the sea, and then it's my master's hand, which to me is the like this is the resolution in some sense. And we still have Let Me Ride to go, and then that reprise. But to me, this is the culmination of his kind of understanding of salvation, is that he's figured out like what he's supposed to do, what his work
Yeah.
is. And his work, they don't specifically detail it, but his work is to be used by his creator, to be used by God. Like he is a tool in the hands of God, and we would hope for good, right? But we know there'll be a little bit of both there. But he's finally figured it out, right? There's a surrender there. There's a peace that says, "Hey, this is what I was called to do, and I will walk these barren lands. I will follow his command. I'll be the hammer in my master's hand when the devil's wheel spins round." So, temptation and all that, it's not going to go away. But with sword and shield, I'll lay him down, right? I will combat the evil and the devil with, with the tools of God, if you will, the tongue and horn to ashes and sand. I'll be the hammer in my master's hand. And it's got a lovely melody. All the songs really do. There's a simplicity, like you said, some nice melodies and some catches. And then I caught someone comment that about one of the songs in particular that they didn't like how Bruce sang it. And I love all versions of Bruce's voice,
Yeah.
and whatever. That's just my
Yeah.
blind bias, and there's hardly anything he's done that I don't like. So I'm not a very good critic, but he uses his voice very intentionally. Like
He does.
this is very gravelly. It's very like now there's certain songs where he'll whisper a bit. Like there's some whispering here
Yeah.
to fit the song God sent you. But going to California, all my God's children, there's like this growl, right? It's very
Yes.
earthy.
That's what he's wanting,
Yeah,
right?
it's very gritty. He's a character in the song, and it's what makes the song more than it would be if he took his hungry heart voice and sang
Yeah.
these songs. You'd be like, they
Yeah.
would they would sound like a child's hymn or something. It wouldn't play the same way.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the tools in his creative toolbox is changing his voice, changing the way he sings,
Yep.
the different and yeah, and I think this is a very emotional album. I think he is sharing and for that experience of the spiritual journey that we assume the hero or heroine of this story is going
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's Let Me Ride, right?
Yeah.
Which is Land of Hope and Dreams. It's Curtis Mayfield's People Get Ready.
Yeah.
That's it. Give me my ticket, Lord, and let me ride. And again, I would say there's both an affirmation and at the same time a question. Like
Right.
he's resolved himself to the life he's lived is it's the one he's lived. For better and for worse, I've been a stranger, I've been a thief, I've been a gambler, I've been a cheat. So there's this confession,
Yeah.
but he's just laying himself before the grace of God and saying, he's basically saying, I hope what I sang in All God's Children is true, because I give me a ticket and let me ride, let me on board, whatever, how you see again heaven and the next life and salvation. Like he's saying, meet me in the land of hope and dreams, and I sure hope it's true, right? But I've done all I can at this point, and this is his final prayer, right? And give me my ticket, Lord, and let me ride. Give me my ticket, Lord, and let me ride. And then the album comes back to my master's hand, which again is a summation, I think, of his resolving what his life's purpose out is. But we get it in instrumental form, which is
Yeah.
which is lovely. I'm like a kid in a candy store with all these albums, but
Yeah.
like this one, I during last week we celebrated the sacrament of Holy Communion, and so I played the instrumental of my master's hand during Holy Communion as folks were coming
Nice.
up. Yeah, there's these songs, and there's a fellow that plays that occasionally will he'll do a song, an offering song. He'll play a little piano and sing. And
Yeah.
I just sent him this afternoon. I sent him a God sent you, and I said, Jim, I think this fits your voice. Can you work on this a little bit? And so many of these songs are going to be showing up in sure.
If he ends up doing a version, please send me.
I will.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, and I do think that it is really beautiful and the image that he's creating. So I did have something. I was curious
Yep.
because we do not have the script.
Yeah.
So I went to AI.
Yeah, I did. I tried to do a little of this too, but you go. I didn't reach any conclusions, but you go
Okay.
first.
So the title of the film, Faithless,
Yeah.
spiritual western,
Uh-huh.
setting the mythical American West, vast and untamed, echoing with silence and soul searching. Synopsis: a lone wanderer, burdened by loss and disillusionment,
Uh-huh.
roams the desert in search of meaning. Haunted by memories and driven by a yearning for redemption, he encounters a series of symbolic landscapes, a river that reflects his past, a mountain that challenges resolve, and a town where faith has long since dried up. And
Mm.
along the way, he meets kindred spirits, a preacher with no congregation, a
Huh.
woman who sings to the wind, and a child who sees visions in the star. As he journeys deeper into the wilderness, the wanderer confronts his own spiritual emptiness. Through trials of solitude, temptation, and fleeting grace, he begins to understand that faith isn't something found, it's something forged. The film culminates in a quiet revelation by the riverside, where the wanderer finally whispers, "Faithless, then I found you."
Huh. I thought you were going in a different direction, but you asked for a
I said,
synopsis of what would be the
w-
film, right?
yeah,
Based on that. Okay. Because I was trying to, and I don't have my phone. I don't know where I left it, but
okay,
I'd have to go back through my chat GBT history. But I was trying to figure out, oh, I have it here.
okay,
Um,
good.
I was trying to figure out because and Bruce has been very hush, probably because he's not allowed to
Right.
reveal what the film might have been. But it was stated somewhere that it was based on a book. So I was trying to, based on putting in as many clues as I can, figure out
Saying, what is the
what's the
book,
book
right?
because I'd be interested then in reading the book. And it gives you when I asked, it gave a whole bunch of. I got to go to my library here to find that particular thread. I may not find it. I don't want to bog us down, but it gave
Okay.
a bunch of potential novels. There was one, I think it was called The Angel's Repost or something. It's like a 600-page book, but apparently it's a fairly well-known book in the 70s. And so I thought, oh, could it be that because it fits some of the indicators, and it's also a very well regarded book, right? You would think someone wasn't going to make a film out of a piece of cotton candy.
Yeah.
So that was one possibility, but I'll send it to you at some point, kind of
Good. Please do. Yeah.
what it suggested as possibilities. None of them are by any means conclusive, but I thought if that came out at some point, it would be interesting to read the book, and that would paint a little bit of a different picture. But again, I go back to the idea that it's a gift that we have it without a film because it can become more personal for you. I
We
think
can
you
make
know,
that image ourselves,
yeah,
the
yeah,
film and the story we make. Absolutely. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Any final
So
thoughts about the release?
I'll tell you, just holistically, I am loving these records. I really am. And I know I've seen some people that are have not been as positive. I think the critical reviews have been pretty much across the board very, very complimentary. I think some fans just are that there's a certain pocket of a Bruce that they love. And he's the guy that on the Perfect World album, and I think that's why he put that together and threw it in the box. But these different genres, I think sometimes folks have a little bit of a hard time with them. To me, that it's brilliant. I will tell you this. Jesse, that I love this album, Faithless, and yet it's probably 6 out of 7 for me. And if I was trying to stack them at this point, it's probably
Yeah.
6 out of 7. That just goes to show you how much I love all of them. But
Yeah.
for me at this stage, the Streets of Philly sessions and Inyo are a cut above all of them. I just think those are just
We
master works.
Yeah, I just finished recording another episode about Ennio,
Yeah.
and we shared, a fan posted that it's his least favorite album and shared why, and he was nice enough to let me read it. And I call this is such, as we've said, it's a gift and a blessing to see. We have Darkness. We
Yeah.
have Born to Run. We have Tunnel of Love. We have Wrecking Ball. We have Magic. I
Yep.
want him to do different things. And I think I used to be in, when my contact center, we would have a morale committee.
Uh-huh.
And I would say, understand, guys, everything you do, no matter what party you plan, no matter what thing, a third of people like it, a third of people hate it, and a
Yeah.
third of people just won't care.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your job is to rotate enough different ideas that that rotates so we
Mm.
don't have the same. And I think there's going to be a group of fandom that are going to release, they're going to
Yeah.
dislike a release, and they're just going to meh about it. And I love that he has done this kind of sharing, everything from a crooner album
Yeah.
to a beatbot album to
Yeah.
this soundtrack to a country album. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I agree 100%. It's yeah, I can't say enough things about. And listen, some of this work, particularly in Yo, yeah, now that requires some hard listening. Like,
Yeah,
you're not going to just put it on in the background. It's not going to do a whole lot for you. But
yeah,
I chat GBT is one of my friends here, and so
yeah,
I was putting in the lyrics to some of the songs in Inyo and asking it to give me a historical kind of cultural breakdown. And it does an amazing job. I trust that it's largely true that those functions are not always accurate. I've had to, in other venues, asking it questions, I've had to call back and say, wait a second, that's not
yeah,
right. And then it says,
exactly,
oh, you're absolutely right. Thanks for catching that on me.
exactly.
But when you get into some of the historical context of those lyrics, which is really simple stuff that you just, I didn't know that. Okay, that was referring to a couple of motorcycles, right? I needed
Yeah,
to know that. And so when you take the time and get those pieces, like it just comes alive. Yeah, the Crooner album. Again, you just put it on at a different time of day, a different part of your mood, and it's just the one song that actually would musically, thematically fit better on Western Stars and on that album is High Sierra, which might be the best song of this entire collection. It's an
yeah,
incredible song. So it's just, yeah, I just keep playing them, and then occasionally I'll sneak into this afternoon, and you don't have to keep this on the recording. This is
yeah.
all fluff a
But I
little,
see you
but
posted, I saw
yeah,
you posted, you went old school.
yeah, and that's right. And then I popped in like after I was listening to Faithless a lot today. I probably
Yeah,
played it like 3 times because I was just thinking about tonight.
yeah,
But then I just went and I grabbed the Lucky Town album and I put that one on. I'm like, oh God, that's a good one too. I just
yeah,
something about getting like a new set of gifts made me go back to a couple old ones and just be reminded, whoa, like boy, we really undersold that one too.
yes, absolutely. I'm going to ask you to put your pastor hat on again,
Sure.
and thoughts on, Bruce has now wrapped up the tour, but he was very vocal about the situation here
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah.
Any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I obviously I feel the way he does, right?
Yeah,
I got listening to it the first time, couple times. I got goosebumps here, and I said,
yeah,
"Amen." That's right. And I feel like he certainly has stayed away from it more so than in other times. And he had a very defined divine focus for the tours that existed in 23 and 24 and the letter to you material, the life and death.
yeah,
And I just feel like he felt like, all right, this I don't like what's going on. I've got a voice And also, I think the third factor was it didn't feel like he should, like a third year of rolling out that show, which had a beautiful center to it, right? The Last Man Standing, Backstreets, like that was the
Yeah.
core of the show, and it was, and then I'll see you in my dreams at the end. That was beautiful and the core, but it felt like it was time to move on from that. And he built a similar show, but it had a different center to it, right? And so the center
Yeah.
became House of a Thousand Guitars, My City of Ruins, Chimes of Freedom, and just this call towards democracy. Listen, half the, I don't know how, what his fan split is. I it's probably 60-40 or something, or 65-35, given I think his own politics and some of his music.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that, people that I know that I'm friends with that are just like, that, that killed it for him. They don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And I get it on one hand. I think if he had a completely opposite view, like if I try to put myself in their shoes and I say, if I came to this concert just ready to experience freedom and
Yeah.
rock and roll and go to the church of Springsteen, and he had an opposite view of mine, and he opened up with saying, hey, what the president's doing is important and it's
Yeah.
right, and it's, I would feel a sense of deflation. Oh, like
Yeah.
that would be a gut punch. And right or wrong, that's what those people are feeling, right? So
Yes.
I can understand that. I sympathize with it. I think he could have sent largely the same message with a few less words and let the music tell the story. But I respect him for what he did and I support him for what he did. But he could have probably played it a little different if he didn't want to upset some people. Just playing Rainmaker alone and changing the last verse was arguably all you had to say.
Yes.
But he wanted to be more explicit, and so he did. And so
Yeah.
now that's over. We continue to, I guess, do what we can as citizens. And
Yep.
but it's hard not to be, and I know where you stand on these things. It's
Yeah.
hard not to be overwhelmed by it all. And just,
Yeah.
I feel it as someone who has a responsibility and a role as a pastor. It's a really hard thing. I'm in a fairly conservative area, and at the end of the day, like those people, they're not going to hear me. So I'll dip my toe into those things, but some people won't hear me, and a whole
Yeah.
bunch of people, they're dealing with kids and cancer and bills, and
Yeah.
they just want to be held in some way, and you don't want to lose them
Yeah.
by so it's tricky. And I
It
think
is a tricky thing.
Bruce
Yes.
feels that same tension, and
So too.
it's hard, but I applaud him because I think those of us that feel the way he does
Mm.
don't feel like this is, the same old story. Like this is different, right?
Yeah.
This isn't questioning, although he questioned it at the time, and rightly so, this isn't questioning George W. Bush
Yeah.
and making a decision about going to war. We should question those things too, but this feels very different. And we hope it's not. We hope, yeah,
Yeah.
at the end he said it beautifully. I forget, I think it was before My City of Ruins, right? He said that he quoted the author James Baldwin and said that there's, and I forget the exact quote, but there's not, it doesn't feel like there's as much,
Yeah.
goodness there, but there's enough, right? And so we rest on there being enough, and that our principles and our democracy will hold, because it is, people's voices do matter, right?
Yes.
And so that's it. But yeah, I respect and applaud him for what he did, and and then on a less weightier matter, I'm thrilled to hear him say that he's got another album that's ready to go for next year. There's a
Absolutely.
tracks 3 that he's got, and I'm like,
Yeah.
can it get what a I think I
Yeah.
posted this on Spring Nuts the other day, just thinking about the output from Western Stars on. It's
Yeah.
just, we're pretty fortunate, right, to just be getting all this at such a late stage of his career.
Yeah. Absolutely. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
Email apammy@live.com. You can find me on Facebook as well, but those two venues would be the best. And yeah, great talking, great being here.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. It's been a joy. I am so happy. Thank you. And we'll continue. I'm sure I'm going to have you on again. All right, my friend, you have a good summer.
You
We'll
too.
talk soon.
All right.
Listeners, let us know what you think. For now, be safe, be kind, and let's talk soon. Goodbye. And we're
Thanks,
out.
Jesse.